Hi everyone, for existing subscribers, welcome back. If you're new to my channel, welcome and don't forget to hit subscribe. Now for those who don't know, I'm Alicia and I've been interviewing inspirational people and businesses to find out how and why they inspire others. This week, I interviewed YouTuber and social media influencer Amanda Muse. Here's how it went. Hi Amanda and welcome to the channel. To begin with, if you could just introduce yourself.
Great. Thank you for having me, first off. So I'm Amanda, and on the internet, I'm amandamuse. I'm a mom of two. I've been making YouTube videos for the last 8 years, and I speak a lot about my journey through life, motherhood being, a very prominent feature, but also being a woman and aging and fitness and relationships and really sharing my lived experience. And I just, I love it so much. I'm also a podcast host and I'm on Instagram and I do all the things.
Must keep you very busy. So, what made you get into YouTubing? What made you start all that?
Well, gotta go back a bunch of years here. So in 2010, I got married to my husband. And being a Canadian, I'm from Montreal, but at the time I was living in Vancouver, British Columbia. And this opportunity came up for him. He's a pilot. And we had always thought about the possibility of living elsewhere, living abroad. And this opportunity came up to go to Malaysia. And so we did it. We got married and I moved there, had never been there before. And it was part of our life plan I'd say loose life plan to start a family. And so here I was, very much not working. I was a dependent. And at the time, being 2010, this is kind of when some of those big YouTubers were becoming YouTubers. And I started watching a lot of YouTube and was gravitating towards women as mothers and having babies. And I was like, I should totally start a channel. Took me 8 months, but eventually I picked up the camera and I really wanted to share my experience through motherhood and that journey and just document life at that time. And then it kind of evolved and became so much more, this community of amazing people sharing their experiences. And I just love it so much.
I mean, you're doing so well now. I mean, you've got what, 90,000 followers or subscribers?
I do. Yeah.
Fantastic. So I bet you're glad you started.
I sure am. It's one of those things that's wild. Like right now during this pandemic, the pilot is the one who isn't working, and somehow the person who plays on the internet and makes videos is the one working. It's a very strange shift, I'll tell you that much. But honestly, it's just one of those things where I didn't know this could be a job, and it's like this merging of hobby and work, and it's like the best gig ever.
Which is good. So, what was it, if you don't mind me asking, what you did before you started YouTubing?
Oh, girl, it's been so many things. So I guess the prominent one was when I met my husband, I was a flight attendant. So
Okay.
that was very like that cliche, pilot flight attendant thing. It was fun. Not quite the gig for me. There's a lot of like night shifts and really early mornings. And I realized I got out of that in a hurry. So right before I moved, my last formal job was I managed a team, an administration team for an insurance company. I speak French. And so I was able to, yeah, I'm from Montreal, we speak French. And so I was able to manage the team in Quebec, and there was some travel here and there. And it sounds very dry, insurance, but it was honestly such a fun growing experience. And then I have done my first job was I used to teach ballet class. I'm kind of one of these people that's a doer, like I'm always working. So that was my last formal.
It sounds like you like to keep busy and active. And like you say, in the last job, you were working with a team. So, how did you find that transition to now working on your own, being your own boss? How was that?
I think the trickiest part was, here I was fairly young, managing people twice my age. And I just had this, I'm just a worker bee. That's what I do. I think the trickiest part was going from this very formal income generating type of woman to becoming a dependent while I was living in Malaysia. And it was like, what do I do here? I just grab a coffee and sit by the pool. That was a hard shift. And I think being that I'm such a doer, I started my channel when my daughter, who's 8 now, was 6 months old. And when I think back on those days, it's like I had a baby in a carrier. I was bouncing on an exercise ball, teaching myself how to edit videos, learning every single aspect of this industry just by myself because I needed to keep active. And working for myself is, it's almost like if you talk to anybody who's an entrepreneur and works for themselves, I'm pretty sure I've never worked more or harder in my entire life, because the boundaries between regular daytime duties or mom duties and parenting duties in life and then running a business, like I just don't stop. So when my kids were small, I always say I built my business between 10:30 at night and 2 o'clock in the morning, because it was like, I'm not really going to get interrupted mostly during those hours. So, working for yourself is so freeing in the sense that, yes, you build your own schedule and you create that time for yourself, but also it's literally all you. So there isn't that safety net, which can be, this is heightened level of stress, which might explain why I take my self-care so seriously, because you need to have this balance when there isn't that support in place. There isn't, a company that's going to just throw me a landline. It's like, I've got to do it all for myself.
So for someone watching this who wants to do the same, become a YouTuber, what would you say to them? Obviously, I'm guessing you have to be so like self-motivated.
Ooh, yes.
What would you?
Self-motivating. I think that the trickiest part I find is people trying to pick what they would talk about or what their topics would be. And I've been having this conversation lately more and more, I think, because people are in this weird time of potentially having to pivot their life and their career. And when it comes to creating online, you know, when I started, you were a comic, you were a mum, like a mummy blogger. I cannot stand that term, by the way. It's like, we're so much more than, I don't even blog. Don't call me a mommy blogger. But you were so specific, where now I feel like we're realizing we can be many things. We can wear many hats. And so what I'm finding is my biggest thing is, what comes easiest to you? If I was to have a coffee with you, what would you love to talk about? Just, you could talk about it for hours. Go in that direction. I think a lot of times people feel like, they see others having success, so they think they have to recreate that topic or that style, when in reality, we are going to be attracted to what you just, what comes spilling out of you and what is easy. Because I think sometimes we think that something's got to be hard or challenging in order for it to be successful, when honestly, what I've learned, and specifically during this pandemic, I started creating a different type of content lately, and in my channel is having a moment right now. There's some viral things happening, and it's making me laugh because I literally just went and did what was easiest, and it's what's working.
Which is great. Great for your channel. That actually brings me nicely on to my next question about content. So many people always talk about your content needs to be very samey, it needs to be consistent. Now, I've seen your channel and you don't necessarily stick to one sort of thing. What are your views on keeping consistent, keeping with the same topic?
I think that if any, you have to be willing to pivot according to how people are consuming content. So when I first began, I definitely created what was interesting, which was like mummy content and what I'm feeding my 6-month-old. And then I got pregnant again and shared that journey, all of it really being with me as the primary focus. But I started to realize that what I naturally was interested in, I would create content around, but then you have to pair that with how people are watching. So, getting to know your audience, what do they enjoy about you, and create content around that. I'm definitely a fan of consistency. So if you want people to continue to show up for you and celebrate you and support your work, you need to show up for them, right? Because I always say to my community, I am nothing if not for them. When I work with brands, for example, I'm always considering how is this going to be received and perceived by my community, because without them supporting this work, I won't get the work. It is a cycle, right?
Yeah.
So I think that my experience, having worked in a formal office setting, having to work those kind of hours, really set me up for success with the business side of this, because I think, I was laughing with my husband the other day and said, I'm like a swan. Everything looks calm on the exterior, but meanwhile, those feet are just going, and I work until the work is done. That may mean at 2:30 a.m. where I'm like, eyes starts twitching because I need to get the work done, but you do what needs to be done. And I think that's the tricky part with this, is it's like, you got to keep showing up. You have to create what people want. I remember in 2018 in Canada, podcasting was like, nobody was really doing it. And I thought, hold on, what do I do on my channel? I have conversations. I could take those little bite-sized ones and extend them and really go deep with layered conversation. And so I created a podcast. Did I know how to do it? No. It was very stressful to try to figure it out. But like anything, once you do it and figure it out, the next time is not as hard. And so I think it's like constantly pivoting, showing up for people. And if you want to have longevity in any space, you have to be willing to make those small changes. So you're right. On my channel, I have lots of different types of content, and I sort of just go where the winds are taking me, but it's definitely, there's strategy behind it.
So exactly what is that strategy? I know you've just touched briefly on it.
The strategy, you know what it is? If I could just sum it up, it's learn how to read your analytics. Once you learn how to read your analytics, you can create content in reverse, right? So just as a prime example, I'm being that I started my motherhood journey in Malaysia, I have noticed that over the years, my content where I feature Malaysia always did quite well. But I always said to myself, well, no, it's too easy. I love Malaysia and I love talking about it, but somehow I just didn't think it was fair to create content that would do so well. I don't know the logic there. And then here I was sitting here, my husband's off work, everything was changing. The industry that I work in kind of stalled in terms of my brand partnerships. And so I thought, my goodness, this is the one time I can really learn my analytics. And as I started to research it, because YouTube specifically as a platform is really, honestly, it's amazing what you can figure out. I mean, you can even tell when people drop off your content. So if you say something and you notice every time you say those words in a video, people drop off, stop saying those things, But I realized there were 2 words that were really driving people to my work. And I took those 2 words and then I made a video about it. And that video is sitting at like nearly 800,000 views at the moment and bumped my content. And so really it's, why do people show up? I have a genre of videos I make. It talks about age gap relationships because my husband is a little older than me. And as I started to dig deep, I realized people were showing up because of that. Who knew? So I start making content to tailor it to those viewers. But, and there is a caveat, and it's, you need to be able to create content in an authentic way, because we as viewers, we know when it's fake. We know when it's like, it's a little too, what's the word I'm looking for? Just put on. Mm-hmm. And so if you can marry those 2 topics, which is learn your analytics, figure out why people show up for you, and then make content in a genuine way, it's like magic.
That's fantastic. It's perfect insight to kind of what I wanted to show my viewers. Now, briefly you mentioned your podcast. Can you just give us an insight?
Yeah, it's The Sandwich. Although I may be changing that name. I'm always on the fence, again, when you start something 2 years ago. I find that I don't know if you listen to podcasts yourself, but when I seek out a podcast, I want entertainment. Now, I know there's a lot of business-based podcasts, and those are great, but I find because I'm so immersed in the business side of things as my day job, doing this, I just need a break. I want to be entertained. And I realized that I was gravitating towards those types of conversations that were a little less scripted. So what I like to do is have those intimate type of conversations, which usually touch on, self, health, and happiness, and a marriage of those three things a lot of the times, with either solo episodes, or I have my husband on there, which always gets a little saucy. He's quite fun. Or, a guest, like someone in the industry, or just a friend, a regular person, like my dad is real sweet, and I'll get him on there talking about health and fitness. And, I love conversations that are real. And, real has kind of always been a tagline of mine. And before real was what it is now, and this term of being authentic. I mean, I feel like I've been doing this forever, but, being able to bring people to the table and listen in on a conversation that maybe they wouldn't get a chance to regularly. And I think one of the reasons I started my channel and what I do so many years ago was to combat loneliness, because here I was, a brand new mom, which motherhood, we don't like to talk about that harder side of it, but it is a very selfless, lonely place. It can be, especially in those early days. And so I find I'm always speaking to that person, who might not have that group of friends that they can rely on, who might not be in a circle, whether it's the family that they live with, the community they live in, who can like have those juicy conversations with them. And so that's what I hope to offer. And I often say I'm like your virtual BFF. So, those juicy convos you get into over wine or coffee, and you just kind of want to go on and on. So that's what I love to talk about there.
You mentioned briefly about, motherhood being quite lonely. Now, I know some of my viewers are mums of 2, 3 children, or what would you say to them with regards to being lonely? How do you get through it, and how do you keep going?
I think it's tricky with your first, especially, but it's reminding yourself that motherhood has chapters. I just shared a post today actually on Instagram where I spoke about how right now I have time to work out, and I can dedicate like 2 hours a day to my self-care and my fitness. 2 hours, like 5 years ago, was not an option. If I could sit down and have a coffee and drink it in entirety while it's hot, it was like a miracle. So I think it's reminding yourself that nothing lasts forever. And I know that's a very grand statement, but there is no marker of time like watching children grow. So it's like new and delicious challenges every year. And every year you get a little bit more time to yourself. So it is very lonely and selfless to start. But I find, I guess my biggest tip is constantly remind yourself what it is that you enjoy, just you, separate from your role as a mother. We can lose ourselves in motherhood, and that is beautiful and delicious, and everyone should do it, but not forever, because your children are watching. And if you take pride in yourself, if you take care of yourself, if you make time for yourself, your children will emulate those things. And I think that's a message I always hope to share when I share my content, when I share my work.
I think that is a very important message. So, sticking with your personal life, you talk quite a bit on your channel about your husband being older. So we see that quite a bit in celebrities and just normal people as well. Can I just have your views on the age gap?
Absolutely. I find there's a lot of people kind of curious about it, because you may see it, but you don't necessarily get to see the ins and outs of it. And I think that age is truly, yes, it's a number, right? But I don't really notice it, to be honest, only occasionally. Like right now, my husband is, he's resisting my requests for him to be, more fit and get involved in health and fitness. I'm like, how do I phrase that, not sound like a jerk? But I'm trying to help him like navigate how crappy so many of us are feeling right now. And he's always saying to me, I'm like 51. I'm like, you know what? You are what you think you are. It can be a self-fulfilling prophecy. So just snap out of it. And, who cares how old you are? Just do what you need to do. So there are moments where he likes to throw around the word your generation, which makes my eyes roll back into my head. And the one thing that I think is quite fun with having someone, a little older than you is that he definitely like tethers me to the earth. Like I feel sometimes we can get so worried about things, or similar to what I was saying about those like new days in motherhood, you just don't see the end or how this will ever change. Where he's a few steps ahead of me. So he definitely keeps me grounded and calm, whereby I feel like I give him a little joie de vivre and a little bubble of like youthfulness and fun. So it's this really nice meeting in the middle. And as a parent, what's beautiful about watching my partner, whom I've been with him for 16 years now, we met when I was 20, so time goes. But he is at a point in his life where fatherhood is everything to him. He's not looking to go out with the boys and live some youth he didn't live. Like the man has been everywhere in the earth because of his work. And so he's so focused and able to prioritize in that way. But the other thing is, just when it comes to relationships, it's like, you have to constantly be willing to challenge each other in a healthy way, and to recognize that you will grow and you will pivot through life, and that you have to find each other as you do those things independently. And I think one of the magical things about Dean and I is that we always say we're very lone wolf people, but we choose each other. And that codependency thing will naturally happen, of course, but you want to maintain your independence. And that's what I think is beautiful. Like for the longest time, he was a mystery on my channel. Like back in the day, I mean, I saw videos titled Mystery Husband because he didn't understand what I was doing and didn't want to participate, but eventually found his way there. And it's quite fun and a wonderful add of color, to my content. But yeah, relationships are tricky, I think any age, and you just have to have that little spark that you keep trying to ignite over the years.
And what do you think is when people slate celebrities for having such a big age gap? Why is that? Like, what do you think that reason is?
I think because we obsess about youth, we're obsessed with young things, pretty young things. And a lot of times it's, men choosing a younger partner, and we like to find the negatives in that. But I mean, you're seeing it more and more. I mean, I love seeing like Kate Beckinsale is always dating younger guys. First of all, she's very good looking. And I'm like, good for you. You know what I mean? Like live your best life. And I just think it's people's maturity levels, people's energy levels are going to differ. And if you find a connection with someone, and PS, all within consent and age appropriateness, because I do get some weird comments and I'm like, that's not legal. Don't do that, But I think it's just easy to pick apart what we don't understand, honestly. And I do have people say, there's a chance that you will spend some time in your life alone because you do have an older husband. And I say, perhaps, but the years we spent together and do spend together are so delicious that to be with someone my age. You know what I mean? Like it's, to me, that's such a strange concept.
So leading on, my other point was, why is it acceptable for the man to be older and not so much the woman?
That's a tricky one. I think it's the way we identify with, we don't see women age. First of all, let's just talk about that. We don't get to see women aging very often. I find I actively seek out women in their 50s, in their 60s, doing amazing things, also living really healthy lifestyles, because that's something that I find interesting, and looking to see women aging, separate from the relationship side of things, because I find I'm very passionate about this, but it's, looking at women's aging faces so that I am not fearful of what's to come, that I see women who I admire, who inspire me, who I respect, and I get excited about that phase of life. I think it's what we see. So you don't see older women and younger men as often, but if we saw more of it, it would normalize it, right? And so that's what I guess that's what I try to do. Didn't really think about it that way, but with what Dean and I share is like, it's just normalizing that marriage is tricky. Relationships are tricky. The age is only one little thing that we don't even notice anymore, right? Only when we do like really long bike rides and I can keep going and going and he, he gets a little more tired. But I mean, aside from that, it's really normalizing it. Like you get to pick your life, you get to pick your partner. And if you choose to have a partner in this life, you know, that process, choose wisely because it will impact how happy you are for your days. And so it's not a quick decision, and you don't want to base it just on age.
Your partner's also a pilot. Previously, you mentioned about you lived in Malaysia. How was living away from your friends, your family?
It definitely had its moments of being very hard. You know, there was a lot of sacrifice. I have a younger brother and I missed his wedding, that still breaks my heart. It's just like, oh, but I had an 8-month-old baby and it's a very long way to travel. It's over 24 hours of travel to get from Malaysia to Canada. And there is a lot of sacrifice. That said, though, I left my home when I was 19 and I moved to a different province and then I moved across the country. So I definitely sort of did it in stages that made that big move not as painful. But I do think that cutting the cord to one's life and doing things that are kind of terrifying is truly an opportunity to grow as a human being. And there's nothing like having to rely solely on yourself to gain some confidence in this world, for sure. And you know, it really does highlight who's there for you and what's important, and helps you figure out how you want those relationships to look. And fortunately, even then, you know, we were doing video calls and texting, and so that really helped, and you get into a good routine, but not without some sacrifice, for sure.
If you had the chance to do it again and like almost relive your life, would you do it again or would you choose to stay?
100% I would go without hesitation. And I think if anything, I would be a little more calm in the experience. For anyone who's watched my content, I'm not shy to say that when I haven't done something before, I am like overcome with stress and anxiety because it's just complete fear of the unknown. So there was a whole lot of, like, I think I cried for half the flight from BC to Malaysia because I was by myself. My husband was already in Malaysia waiting for me. And absolutely, I think every step, the tricky ones, the delicious ones, the hard, you know, that is all allows you to be where you are. And I wouldn't give any of it up.
Thank you very much. So finally, I have 10 very quick questions. Are you
Great.
ready?
I'm ready.
Okay. Favorite thing to vlog about?
I probably fitness. I'm obsessed with my fitness right now. Fitness and just being outside.
Okay. Canada or Malaysia?
Oh, that's so tricky. Since we're heading into the fall, like soon, because leaves are starting to fall, I'm going to go with Malaysia because it's hot all the time.
Which is lovely.
It is.
Now, is it possible to show your true personality through Instagram?
I want to say my first reaction is yes, but like I'd say a good 85% because I'm not a big fan of showing children in distress or upset or having down times. I'm not a big fan of showing like those types of darker moments, and you do need to have some privacy. So I'd say a good yes, but there's always that little caveat.
And what are your views on TikTok?
I love TikTok. Here is why I love it. It is a platform that so far is not based on popularity.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, anybody can be a somebody, you know, air quotes. And I love that. And you're seeing, it's just fun. And every time I'm on TikTok, I laugh. And like, what's wrong with that? You know what I mean? I mean, you need a giggle every now and then.
You definitely do. Now, one growth tip for an up and coming YouTuber?
Probably, I'm gonna give you 2 for 1. Learn your analytics. Trust me, because it took me 8 years to finally figure that out, and I wish I'd done it sooner. I just never had time. And consistency. Just keep showing up. Even if it's not perfect, put it out there.
One view that you feel really strongly about?
that we are more than just mothers, and you can be an amazing mother and also have a potty mouth and also put yourself first and also like to drink beer and stay up late and like sexy things. Like, you can be so many things. You're not just one.
Very true. Favorite way to keep fit?
Weights, lift heavy, squat low, sweat a lot.
Okay. Makeup or no makeup?
If I'm on camera and put a little bit on today, but if you've been on my channel, you know that's not always the case. I say whatever makes you happy.
If you had to choose one, what would you pick?
Sunscreen? Sunscreen with a little tinted SPF.
Okay. I like that. Mind you, you're in a hot country, so.
Exactly.
Marshmallows or chocolate?
Oof, chocolate.
And one reason for someone to live in Canada or go to Canada?
Seasons. I know I mentioned that the weather in Malaysia is lovely, but I am a forever cup half full, you know? So I love the fall. I love shoveling snow. I love skating. I love skiing. I love doing all the things. So there's so much in Canada. One coast to the other. Amazing things.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, and thank you for your time.
Thank you for having me. This was so great.
Now, I hope you all enjoyed that interview with Amanda. There was a couple of points that I think we can all really take from that. The first point I'd like to talk about is that if you've got something to do and you set out to do it, make sure you do it until you get it done. As we heard from Amanda, she stays up until very late at night to make sure that her work is completed and it's ticked off her to-do list. And I think that's something we can all learn, because if you don't do something today, then you're probably not going to finish it tomorrow either. So get your head down and make sure that you get the work done. Now, the second point I'd like to talk about is when Amanda was talking about if you've got something to do it, because you'll figure it out, and once you've figured it out, then it'll be easier the next time. And elaborating on that point, it's like anything. It's like learning to ride a bike. The first time you might struggle, but if you get on that bike for the first time and ride it without the stabilisers, then the second time when you come to do it, it's going to be 100 times easier because you've already figured it out. And that goes with anything what you do in life. Now, you can follow Amanda here. If you have someone that inspires you, comment below. I'm always so interested to find out who others find inspirational. Likewise, if you have an inspirational story to tell, comment below, drop me a message on social media, or even drop me an email. On Sunday at 4 o'clock, I'll be speaking with Hannah Castledine, who's also known as the Funny Mummy Does Slimming World. I'll be talking with Hannah about her weight loss journey and about how she's lost the amount she has and gone on to winning different awards. If you've enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up, comment below, let me know what you think, and don't forget to hit subscribe. See you all on Sunday. See you later.